Hello and welcome back to my channel. How are you all doing? Hope you're well. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to make pickled green beans and canning them using the hot water bath canning method without a canner or any fancy equipment. So, if you want to learn how to make pickled green beans and also learn how to do hot water bath canning successfully without a canner, please keep watching. First, let's start with the ingredients for this recipe. I'll be using green beans. Try as much as you can to get the very tender ones. A cup of water, half a cup of white vinegar. You can adjust your vinegar water ratio to your liking. A teaspoon of black peppercorn, a teaspoon of coriander seeds, 6 cloves of garlic, a teaspoon of sea salt, dried chilies, 3 glass jars of 250 ml. And here's an overview of everything I'll be using for this recipe. First, I'm going to sterilize the jars. There are various ways of doing this. First, you could sterilize them by cooking them in hot water for 10 to 15 minutes. But when doing this, make sure that the jars do not come in direct contact with heat. So you could improvise by detaching the cover from your mason jar, if you have the detachable ones, and simply use a string to bind them together like so. You can use more jar rings if the surface area of your stock pot is bigger. Once this is done, you can just place it at the bottom of your pot like so, and place the jars in and let them cook to sterilize. I'm just showing this as a demo. If you intend to sterilize your jar using this method, please ensure that the jars are submerged in water and the lids are off. You could also use a steamer like this one and place your jar on top, or a circular cooling rack that fits your pot. Again, make sure your pot is deep enough to allow the jars to be submerged in water. Another way to sterilize your jar is to use the oven method. For this, you will simply need to place your jars and lids, if they're metallic, in the oven and leave them for 10 to 15 minutes in the heat. If your jar has got a plastic lid, please do not place it in the oven, as this will cause it to melt. This is the last jar sterilization method which I'll be talking about in this video, and it's also the method I'll be using. I call it the kitchen towel method. For this, I'll simply place a kitchen towel, a clean kitchen towel, at the bottom of my pot, place the jars in it, and fill it with water. Here, I've got my jar sterilization going on. I've left the jars and lids to cook for 15 minutes on high heat. Here, I'm just going to move the jars around for a bit as my pot is slightly smaller than expected. Now it's past 15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead to take out the jars and the lids out of the water using a kitchen tongue. Please be very careful when doing this, and if you've got a jar lifter, you could use that as well. I'll place the jars and lid on a tray lined with clean kitchen rolls. I'll leave the jars and the lids to cool naturally and air dry while I move on to the ingredients. Here are my green beans. I have rinsed them and taken off the tops and bottoms. I'm just going to go ahead to cut them into 3. Please feel free to go with any size you prefer. Now that I'm done cutting the green beans, this is what they look like. Now let's prepare the spices. I'll transfer the coriander seeds to my mortar and break them into smaller pieces. This process will easily enable the coriander seeds to infuse their flavor into the pickle. Now that I'm done crushing them, here's what they look like. I'll do the same with the black peppercorn. Here's my crushed black peppercorn. Now let's prepare the pickling solution. I'll add water, vinegar and salt to a pan and let it cook on low heat until everything dissolves. Now that the salt has dissolved, I'll give it a quick stir and take it off the cooker. Now let's transfer our beans into the jars. I'll start by transferring the crushed coriander seeds into the jars, then do the same with the crushed black pepper. Next, I'll add 2 cloves of garlic into each jar. And next, I'll transfer the green beans into the jars using a tongue. I'll also push them down as I go so I can fit in as much green beans as I can. Now that the jars are filled to my satisfaction, I'll ladle the pickling solution into each jar. When adding the vegetables and pickling solution, it's a good practice to leave a reasonable amount of headspace of maybe 2 to 3 centimeters, especially if you will be processing your vegetables using the hot water bath canning method. This is because while the vegetables are being heated, they will expand. So leaving a reasonable amount of headspace will allow the jars to expand, then vacuum seal when completely cooled down, which is the main aim of the hot water bath canning process. Then I'll use my kitchen tongue to carefully place the lids on the jars, then screw them on tightly. The reason why I'm using a tongue to pick up the lids is because the lids have been sterilized and I don't want to mess about with them. The reason why I'm screwing on the lid tightly is because the jars will be going into the water for the water bath canning and I wouldn't want the water to seep into the jars. Now that the jar has been sealed, this is what they look like. You can stop here and simply transfer the beans into the refrigerator once cooled down. And it can also be eaten immediately, but in this video I'll be taking things a few steps further by showing you how to do the hot water bath canning method. And for this method you don't need any special equipment. Now I've got my pot filled with water on the cooker with a kitchen towel placed at the bottom so as to avoid direct contact with the cooker. Now I have my jar lifter which I'll be using to place the jars into the hot water. If you haven't got a jar lifter, that's fine. What I will do is to place the kitchen towel at the bottom of the pot, place the jars on, then fill my pot with water, then begin the canning process by turning on the cooker. Now that the jars have been placed and fully submerged in the water, I'll leave them to cook for 15 to 20 minutes. When doing this, please ensure your jars are fully submerged in the water so as to get the full benefits of the water bath canning process. Now it's 15 minutes later and I'll go ahead to take the jars out of the hot water. Please be extra careful when doing this. Again, if you haven't got a jar lifter, that's no problem at all. Start by turning off your cooker. Get a small cup to bail out the water. When the water gets to a very low level in the pot, use an oven glove to take out the jar and place in a safe place to cool down. Look at that gorgeous color. As you can see, the beans have changed color from bright green to slightly golden green. I'm gonna leave the jars to completely cool down so that they can be fully vacuum sealed. This could take up to 9 hours or less depending on your climate. Next, I'm gonna do a quick demo to show you how to know if your jar is fully vacuum sealed. This was just a couple of minutes after I just took the jars out of the water, and as you can see, the middle of the lid is curving outward with a slight protrusion, giving it a convex look, which means that the jar is not yet fully sealed. In comparison, in this second clip, which was taken later in the day after the jar had fully cooled down, you can see that the middle of the lid had relaxed and curved inwards, giving it a concave look, which means that the jar has now been fully vacuum sealed. While your jar is cooling down, it's normal to hear the jars making a popping sound. This is actually a very good sign. It means that the seal is being formed by the inner vacuum in the middle of the lid. Remember that the jar expands during the canning process, which is the need for the head space. And now that the jar is cooling down, it makes the popping sound as it retracts. Now it's 48 hours later and it's time to open up one of the jars. Just look at that. I can't get over how pretty this looks. Did you hear that pop? Just as the same as those jams or canned vegetables from the store sound when you open them for the first time. I'll scoop out some of the beans to show you what they look like. Here's a closer look. Remember that once opened, it needs to be transferred into the refrigerator to avoid spoilage. But if unopened and because it's gone through the water bath canning process, this could last at least for up to 12 to 18 months or longer without relying on refrigeration. All you need to do is to store it in a cool, dark place. In case you notice that the garlic in your pickled green beans has turned blue, this is totally normal, as this is just a reaction between the acidity in the vinegar and the amino acid in the garlic. Pickled green beans can be eaten in various ways, as a snack, in sandwiches, on their own, or even in salads. Here, I made a salad. On a bed of spinach, I added celery, grated carrots, pickled jalapenos, made by me, cherry tomatoes, pickled green beans, chopped walnuts, fermented ginger, made by me, roasted cannellini beans, nutritional yeast, and as for the dressing, I used lemon juice, olive oil, apple cider vinegar, and crushed black pepper. I mixed everything together and the result was awesome. So, I guess we've come to the end of this video on how to make pickled green beans and also learn how to do hot water bath canning successfully without a canner. If you've enjoyed watching, please give this video a thumbs up, please subscribe to my channel, and please don't forget to click the notification bell icon so that you can get notified whenever I upload a new video. If you've got any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Take care. Bye.